Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming today, everyone. I'm so glad to see that there's interest in this topic. That's something that has been very useful for me in um, creativity and writing fiction, especially after a couple of years of burnout and stress. And using tarot prompting really kind of brought me back from that dark place and brought back that sense of play and fun and discovery. That's there's a thing that we all love about writing, right? So I'm going to share my PowerPoint presentation here. Okay. There we go. Okay. So tarot for fiction writers. So just a little overview of what we're going to be going over today. So I'm going to just do a little brief history of my tarot background. Then we'll talk about why tarot prompting is a powerful tool for fiction writers. We'll get into some tarot basics, and we'll talk about how to work with the cards. We'll do a practice spread example, and then we'll do some workshop style interactivities. So if you've got your own tarot decks with you, that's great. You can use them today. And if you don't, we have a link to an online random tarot card generator that you can use. Or I can just pull some cards and put them up on the screen for you too. So let's get going. So I actually learned to read tarot cards in Spanish before I learned to read in English. I'd always been drawn to tarot. Whenever there's tarot kind of stuff going on TV shows or books, it's something that I always loved. And then I was assigned a how-to speech for one of my classes, and let's see. Yeah, and so I was wandering down the streets of the old quarter in San Sebastian in Spain and found a deck of tarot cards. And so I still have my super old, falling apart first deck from 25 plus years ago. Yeah, but then I'd never thought to apply that to writing. And I'm not sure when it was probably a year and a half ago or so, Lisa Kessler, who is a wonderful author and speaker, came to speak to Capital Crimes. And one of the things she mentioned that she did was use tarot in writing prompting. And I just thought that was just brilliant because, the things that I know about the tarot, it's full of archetypes, full of story cycles, all sorts of things, messy human emotions, all the things that we kind of go through on our journeys to learn more, obstacles, things like that. So all of that, it just seemed really brilliant. And so I immediately signed up for her class, but it was still 2 months away. So in the intervening time, I was just really so excited about this idea that I started playing with it myself and amassing a large number of tarot decks. I have very many. And just kind of thinking of different spreads to do, connecting what was going on in my brain to other things that I am interested in studying, like neuroscience, creativity, play, just how the whole creative process works in the brain. So there are just so many great connections. And so Lisa's class was fantastic. And somewhere in the next year, I realized that I had amassed just several notebooks full of ideas and connections and tarot spreads that I like to do. And I decided to put this all into a book. Okay. And so why do we do tarot prompting? So it's fun and also science. So you probably didn't think you would get a science lesson with your tarot prompting workshop. However, there's a lot of scientific reason and basis for why the techniques that we use within tarot prompting are helpful. So I'm going to talk about those a little bit. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the creative brain on stress. Okay, so if you think about a time when you've been under a lot of stress. Okay, so we have all sorts of things going on. We've all been through a couple of years of global pandemic and all the things that have come with that. We've got caretaker responsibilities. We've got day job stress, relationship stress, all the stuff that comes in. And so when we're trying to create, it makes it harder, quite a bit harder. The research shows that a moderate amount of stress can actually be beneficial and help spur us into action. However, as stress levels get higher, or when they go into the chronic range, our brains go into survival mode, right? And when we're in that survival mode, what happens is the brain shifts all the resources, or a great deal of the resources, into the hypervigilance and survival. And as most of you can attest, that is not the ideal state of mind for creativity, right? So we've got these stressors going, maybe deadlines looming. And then when we're in that state, we get into this, okay, we have just a limited amount of time and the stress rises. We feel this pressure to get everything right the first time, right? To be so efficient so we don't lose any time. But what happens is we can't access the full range of our creative potential when we're operating in a state like that. Right. And another thing that also hinders our creativity is the brain's efficiency principle. So even when we're not in a state of stress, our brain takes shortcuts, right? That's the whole reason why we're able to, walk and listen to music and think about what we need to do for the day and think about our characters all at the same time without just having to put all of our information, all of our brain's resources into one thing. Okay, so our brains are responsible for really a dizzying number of tasks at any given moment. And so in order to function, the brain creates shortcuts to save resources, right? So it does things like categorization, right? So we can go, okay, that's a person, that's a dog, that's, this is a safe place, this is a comfortable place, or it's not, right? We do pattern seeking. And so really we're biologically wired to take these well-worn paths and grab those obvious ideas to conserve energy for other tasks, right? So when we're trying to think of something, our brain goes for that low-hanging fruit, right? Those first, most obvious ideas. Okay. And so we have to really be aware of this and deliberate to outmaneuver that. So let's talk a little bit about how we can circumvent this and what that has to do with the tarot. Okay, so there are three main principles I'm going to talk about today. One is randomness. The second one is novelty, and the second one is play, and the third one is novelty. And so one way to circumvent the efficiency principle is to embrace randomness. Okay, so when we introduce an element of randomness into our creativity, we go from an isolation set of creativity to interactive creativity. So it doesn't mean we have to interact with a person, but it could be interacting with our environment. So for example, I'm sure some of you have gone to a coffee shop and overheard a snatch of conversation that you think, oh, that's brilliant, I need to put that in my book, right? So that's interacting with the environment. Or you go take a drive and you see a billboard that is really unusual and it reminds you of something else. You put that into your story or whatever you're working on. So tarot prompting works like that as well. So we've got 78 cards. We've got millions of symbols, emotions, all sorts of things. And let's talk about the benefits of randomness and how that will go into play for creativity. So I talked about the isolation to interactivity, right? So what's happening in our brains when we do that is it activates something called semantic search. And when we have the semantic search activated, we've got access to a much wider range of distant associations. Okay. And so this is like including ideas in our subconscious mind. So this is like, you're not just going for the low hanging fruit, right? We're like, oh, this was related to this, which is related to this, which is related to this. Okay. So you're able to access a much wider range of associations that way. Also, this is one people will be happy about, I'm sure. Research supports the idea that you can come to faster solutions, right? Maybe not faster writing. I'm a slow writer, so even though I come up with the ideas faster, might still take more time. But studies have showed when people are incorporating random stimuli into writing practice, the timeline to the solution is faster, right? And so what's happening there is some tasks that you usually do in isolation are outsourced to the random stimuli. So like coming up with all of your details of your character's backstory, all their personal relationships and things like that. So that frees up more space for you to make novel connections, right? And so when we're thinking about our stories and we pull cards with evocative imagery and symbols, it helps our brains reach past those obvious ideas and enhances our creativity. Oh, and I should mention, if you have questions along the way, please put them in the chat, and we will get to those later. All right. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the power of play. Okay. So this is something I've always been really interested in. Another advantage of tarot prompting is when we're stressed, this is something else that can help guide us back to a mindset of playfulness, right? And so with the tarot cards, we've got cards, objects that are generally associated with gameplay, right? And so that sends a subtle signal to our brains that we are about to relax and have fun, do something fun, right? And so it gives us kind of a looser mental state where we're able to take more risks and be more fluid and open-ended. So these are just a few of the benefits of play for creative thinking, right? So that the fluid, open-ended nature of play encourages freedom of thought, right? Flexibility of thought, right? It also emboldens us to consider new possibilities, right? Because we're more likely to take creative risks when we like switch between thoughts and different things while we're playing, right? It increases the likelihood of making connections and working beyond that status quo. And paradoxically, taking time to play during the writing process can actually make us more productive. So that's exciting too. And the third aspect I want to talk about today is novelty. So this is another thing that tarot prompting really brings to the table. So this novelty, when you think about when you've done something new for the first time, right? So like you try a new restaurant and you try this amazing curry dish for the first time, and it's just different and flavorful and wonderful and you love it. Or you travel someplace new, or you meet a new person for the first time, right? You try a new class or technique or something like that. So if you think about the way you feel when you have that novel experience, it's usually a feel-good experience, right? So it's novel experiences have a big role in producing dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter that our brain releases, and this can enhance creativity. And so this is helpful for all writers, but it's especially impactful for those of us like me who have ADHD and others who have executive function challenges. Okay. And so if you're not familiar with executive functions, these are like the control centers of the brain. They're working up here in our prefrontal cortex, and they oversee things like working memory, like being able to pull things from your brain at any second, organizing, planning, executing, monitoring tasks that you're doing, emotional regulation, task initiation, and sustained motivation. And so all of these things that are really important in starting, sustaining motivation, and finishing those long-term projects like writing novels. Okay. Excuse me. And so a little something that's going on with regards to motivation. So in neurotypical, that's what we call the average brains, things work a little differently than they work in neurodivergent brains. So that's, brains that have ADHD, autism, dyslexia, lots of other things, Tourette's syndrome. So for neurotypicals, because of the way their dopamine system works, dopamine reuptake system works, just knowing a task is important might be enough to just go ahead and get started, right? So that's not the case for those with ADHD and others with executive function challenges, okay? It has to do with how the dopamine reuptake system works. So in our brains, we burn through the dopamine much faster, right? And we don't get the same re-up that neurotypicals do. So one thing that's really important, I think, is not laziness or lack of willpower. It's a lack of dopamine. And so read that again if this is something that you struggle with and you beat yourself up because you feel like everybody else just has the willpower to do this. So it's something that's truly going on with our brain. And what we need is a strategy to, meet that challenge and overcome that. And so thankfully, there are a lot of strategies that us ADHDers can do to bridge that motivation gap. And novelty is a huge one, right? Interest, being super interested in something, time pressure, gamification, those are some more. But novelty helps us produce more dopamine so we can keep going, right? So we can start those tasks, so we can keep going through a tedious part where we're not sure what we're going to do. We can keep going through those parts that aren't as interesting to us. And so tarot prompting adds a fresh piece to your ideation process, right? So we've got 78 cards. All of them are just rich with symbolism, illustrations, endless combinations. And if you're like me, in order to keep things fresh, multiple decks help too. So I like to switch it up and keep things fresh, and that keeps the novelty there for me. Okay. And so now we're going to go ahead into the tarot basics. So hopefully that gives you a good background on the creativity behind, or the brain science behind the creativity. So how many of you are already familiar with tarot? Yeah, you can say in the chat if you'd like. Or you can raise your hand. I like that little. Okay. Anybody totally new to tarot? Never used it. First time experience here. All right, we got some of those here too. Okay, good. So we've got a good range of views. So the very basics about tarot. Excuse me. So tarot is a deck of 78 cards. They've been around since the Italian and European Renaissance, possibly before. They're originally used for gameplay, and they're popularized in the U.S. around 1919 when the Rider-Waite-Smith deck was created and used. And so tarot decks are separated into two major parts. The first one is called the Major Arcana, and that is the cards 0, the Fool, through 21, the World. And these cards focus on big archetypes and big picture events. So things that create bigger changes in personal life and stories. Okay. And then the other part is called the Minor Arcana. And that's composed of 4 suits, kind of like a deck of playing cards. We've got wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. And each of those suits has ace through 10 plus 4 court cards each. And so these are usually telling us information about kind of day-to-day events and dealings. And each of the suits of the minor arcana corresponds to a particular element. Wands is fire. So that's about passion, creativity, ambition, pursuing goals. Cups is the element of water. And so that has to do with emotions, feelings, relationships, bonds, romance, creativity, intuition. And so like artistry, spirituality, inner self, all that's in the realm of cups. And then we've got swords that corresponds with air. And swords have to do with the mind, right? So swords are thoughts, reason, logic, beliefs, intellect. And then pentacles have to do with earth, okay? And so pentacles are about money and things that are grounded in the physical world. So health, work, prosperity, security, resources, possessions, and abundance. Okay. And then when we're using tarot as a creative tool, like I mentioned earlier, there are story cycles involved in the progression from in the major arcana from the Fool to the World. Setting off on a journey. You'll find a lot of similarities between the Fool's journey and the hero's journey, and many other story structure archetypes. And in addition to that, there's lots of messy emotions, thoughts, very relatable human experience. Oh no. Sorry, I've got to went the wrong direction. Okay. Yeah, and then one thing to take some pressure off, you do not have to memorize the meanings of all the cards right away, or at all, even if you don't want to. The meanings behind the cards and symbols can be a great resource, and there are tons of guides out there for reference. Most decks come with their own guidebook, and whether it's some of them are physical and some of them are digital. But you can also take inspiration from just the images themselves without even getting into the traditions and significance if you choose. All right, so who's ready to get started with the prompting process? All right, so I'm going to walk you through some of the things that I do to use a deck for inspiration for stories and characters and plot twists and development. So the basics of the process are to get your deck and find a quiet spot where you can concentrate. Then I suggest spending a few minutes thinking about the scene that you'd like to work on, or the character that you'd like to work on, or whatever story question you've got in mind that you need ideas for, right? And so think about what puzzle pieces you're missing, what you already know, what you're missing, right? And then based on what you came up with there, you can choose a prompt to help you go deeper into the scene, okay? And so if you pick up my book, Tarot for Fiction Writers, I've got a prompt library of over 200 prompts based on all sorts of key storytelling elements. And you can also make up your own. There's lots of, storytelling, you know questions that you can ask as well. So what we're going to do, and then you grab a deck, right? You shuffle with your scene questions in mind. And then when you feel ready, you can draw cards for your interpretation. So some questions you might just want one card. Some questions you might want 3. I usually like to do 2 or 3 to give just some different ideas to bounce around. And if you don't have a deck yet, you can use a site called randomtarotcard.com. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. And so you can just click that and it'll pull a card for you. Okay. So that's something you can use here. Now I got to figure out how to get back. Okay. As we do the practice. Okay, so here is the first practice prompt we're going to do. So I'm going to use the prompt. This is one of my favorites and ones that I use most often. It's very simple and kind of laser focuses in on one thing. So what do I need to do? What do I need to know, excuse me, about my story or character to move forward? Okay. And so we're gonna do this in interactive style. So in the chat, I'd like you to give me some suggestions for a character, genre, subgenre, or a story premise that we can work with on this. And so just an example that you might recognize if you've been watching some TV lately. An amateur sleuth and hacker described as a Gen Z Sherlock Holmes receives a mysterious invitation to a reclusive tech billionaire's secret retreat in Iceland, and things take a sinister turn when another guest is found dead. Or hears something on the police scanner, runs out of the newspaper office, goes missing. Ooh. Why did a crime victim keep secrets from her best friend? Ooh, very good. Yeah, so these are great. So let's see. I'm gonna pick this first one. Kay, you were the first volunteer to jump in here. So we're gonna work with this. Okay, so a young woman is running a bookstore and she finds an unusual item. Okay, and so we'll use fantasy for this. So let's see. Now I am going to grab a deck. So I'm going to work with the Modern Witch tarot deck. This is a really fun one. It uses a lot of the traditional symbolism from the classic Rider-Waite-Smith decks, but it also has really cool artwork and modern interpretations. A lot more inclusive, and we've got more diverse ethnicities, sizes, gender presentations rather. So I'm going to shuffle. So let's think. So using that premise, let's just think through that as we're shuffling. Okay, we've got this bookstore, and there's not really a set limit or length of time that you need to shuffle or draw. Just kind of when you feel ready, you can use your intuition, or if you're like, nah, I don't like intuition, I'm just going to do it. You can set a timer for 30 seconds or a minute, or just when you're thinking through your ideas, when you come to a stopping point, you can draw. Some people cut the deck. I don't always do that. Sometimes I do. Okay. I'm going to draw 3 cards here. Okay, so we've got first the Hermit, Judgment, the Knight of Wands. Okay. So there are a couple different ways or techniques we can use for interpretation. And one is just a strictly visual interpretation. Okay. So got someone here. This could be the attic of the bookstore. Maybe she's up here. This reminds me of the attic in the Charmed series upstairs, where they keep their grimoire in the window. Their mom went out. Okay, so maybe there's magical something. She's got a laptop here. She's got a star, a cloak. So she looks kind of maybe witchy. Okay. And Claire, would you read some of the ideas that are coming up in the chat? I can't see both at the same time for whatever reason.
Oh, sure.
Thanks.
First off, could you just once again say the name of that deck? People are loving
Yes,
it.
the Modern Witch deck.
There's a comment about loving that the Hermit has a laptop.
Yeah, right. That's one of the things I like about this deck. There's a lot of modernization and fun stuff.
So with her head covered, maybe she's concealing herself.
Ooh, good. Yep.
Dawn says, although a hermit, she's interactive digitally.
Ooh, yeah.
So, maybe a hacker or in an old environment. She needs a break.
Yep.
Maybe she's trying to get away from the world, shutting down the laptop. Anna says, so those are some of the ideas rolling in for the.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great. And yeah, and so your interpretations can be symbolic or they can be very literal, right? You can say, oh, this little piece of furniture reminds me of something in my grandmother's attic, which reminds me of something else, right? So it might be like 2 steps away from what you see in the card that gets your imagination going. So those are all great ideas. Okay, now let's take a look at judgment. So check out the judgment card here and tell me what you see, what strikes your interest, how that might relate to the character in the bookstore and finding something unusual.
Okay, you want me to start reading?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, great. Okay. Hillary said that reminds her of an angel looking down from on high.
Yep.
Red Wings Retribution.
Ooh,
As
I like that.
oh, Catherine, I like this one. People waiting for answers.
Yes, that's a great one. Yep.
A new beginning.
Hmm.
Says, oh, and past family. Karen.
I like that. Yeah, past family.
Kay says maybe an item that was once celebrated.
Ooh, yeah.
And Jean, the Red Cross might refer to something medical, perhaps even a breakthrough or a medical mission.
Yeah.
Rising from the Dead.
Hmm.
Always a great one.
It's a good thing to find in the bookstore, right? Yeah, and I think you guys are getting a lot of great stuff. Yeah, so judgment, and there's the people's bodies are kind of gray, so maybe like something that's preserved in a jar or something like that might be like the medical, maybe a set of wings. That would be an interesting object to find in a bookstore. Okay, and then let's look at the last one. I've got some glare on this. I've got my anti-glare sheet. So let's look at the Knight of Wands.
Ready to do battle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sarah is ready to go to war.
Yep.
Kay says the beginning of an adventure or quest.
Good.
Harriet holding a tree branch as a spear, rushing against the wind.
Yeah. I just love the
rushing
energy
That's
here.
great. Oh, Karen also notices the writer's wearing old clothes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Heather's point is this has to be the hermit's sidekick.
Ooh, okay, I like that. Yeah.
So she could shoot off in a supporting character.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like a good pairing, like somebody who's withdrawn and likes to stay in, and someone who's got that charging in energy. I think that's a fantastic idea and connection.
Oh, Jesse says an unexpected person coming to help.
Yes. Yeah. So these are all fantastic ideas. So this is a great example of what you can pull out, and then you can kind of look at the connections between the cards, like the suggestion of this is the sidekick, right? Like what a great idea. Yeah. So let's see. So we've got a lot of suggestions. We've got a lot of ideas of what these could mean for someone who is owning a bookshop, and we've got a fantasy world and finds an unexpected object, right? So we could find wings, we could find a laptop that looks super old in like a grandmother's place or a great grandmother's place that's been dead a long time, or something strange that could indicate time travel or portals, witchery, stuff like that.
There could be postcards tucked in the book.
Yeah.
Sydney says, and Karen's curious what the wands represent again.
Ooh, the wands are like action, passion, ambition. If you think about it, you can set wood on fire, right? So, and then that like the passion burns bright with the wands. like creative drive too. I like her little spiky shoulder pads too, and Knight of Wands. Okay, so now that we've looked at the visual ideas, I'm going to pull up the just come out of here real quick, stop sharing, and I'm going to pull up the traditional meanings for these. Okay, so you guys can keep chatting in the chat any other ideas or things that are coming up with these cards, or how to use them, or any questions that you've got. Back, share the screen again. Oh, John, if you don't know how to shuffle a deck of cards, that's okay. You can just go like this. However you like to do it. It doesn't have to be any fancy casino type way. Okay, so this is from the guidebook for the Modern Witch deck again, and another cool thing is that each of the guidebooks have their own unique spin on the cards and point of view. So even if I know the meanings, I really like to look them up in several different guidebooks to cross reference for more ideas, because there might be some tiny little detail that one of the books and one of the takes mentions that is totally different than all the others, and that might be the gold that you need for your story. Okay, so for the Hermit, it says, through solitude, we can discover new things about ourselves. The Hermit has shrugged off material and superficial concerns and distractions, and has retreated to an inner sanctum. She's taken a break from the outside world to focus on herself. The glowing star is the guiding light of her unconscious mind and a pathway to breakthrough. The laptop is the support of learned wisdom and knowledge to help her along her journey. It can also be a special skill that helps the Hermit cope with being alone. It's okay to be alone. Silence and meditation can help you explore your own inner worlds and lead you to new places. There's so many constant distractions that can keep you from focusing on your own self-care. From social media to job stresses to FOMO, it's time to take a break from it all, to retreat to a place that makes you feel safe with the goal of improving yourself. Don't ignore your own mental well-being, and if you need a teacher, a guide, or a therapist to help you along the way, that's okay. Don't be afraid of being alone. Okay, so taking that reading into account, I'd like you to, in the chat, come up with ideas for how this can apply to our idea of this bookstore owner in our fantasy world that finds an unexpected object in her.
Okay, maybe the bookstore owner has moved away from everything she knows. A couple more hidden objects that the owner finds an object but traps her, and the wand person comes to rescue her.
Oh, I love that. That's such a great idea. That's such a great way to pull in all the different cards together.
Kay's got a bit here. Kay says, maybe she's a witch and used to belong to a coven, but after they began practicing dark magic, she left and retreated, now practicing her craft. Whoops. Oh, I lost her here. Her craft on her own while running her bookstore. Perhaps she is talking to a witchy support community online with her.
Oh, I love that too. I'm getting chills. You guys are coming up with such great ideas.
Heather says because she is often alone, she's often misunderstood. So when she discovers this object, she doesn't feel like she can talk to anybody about it until later when the sidekick enters her life and helps her.
Nice.
And Penny goes down the dark road. Or the Hermit has stolen the object of value with powers, and the Knight wants to get it back and return it to its rightful owner.
Ooh, nice.
Anna says after a very busy day at the bookstore, she starts tidying up the shelves, and she thinks how much she would love to have a day off and just relax when the next item is shelved. It's not a book, but it is ... Ooh,
yes. So good.
The bookstore owner's running from her past. Jennifer says she finds a Buddhist altar and it transports her back in time when she meditates.
That sounds so cool. I love that. She's got the little furniture part that kind of set up the convenient altar. See, and notice as you're coming up with things, these are filtered through your own experiences and your own imagination and things and tropes that you love and yeah, so it's a great combination when you're putting your imagination together with whatever comes up when you pull the cards. All right, so now I'm going to go on to judgment. The judgment is the second to the last card in the major arcana group. Okay, so that's kind of like we're almost at the end of the journey. All right, so in this deck, it says at points in our lives, we can feel like there's something pulling us to change. Judgment calls down to us in the form of a benevolent angel and presents us with crossroads on her banner. As humans, we aren't alone in the world, but surrounded by others struggling, each in their own way. Through compassion, love, and desire to be better people, we reach up toward this lofty goal of self-actualization to enrich the world and others around us. Only through responding to the call can we become truly alive. It's not about judging others, but judging yourself. There are times to be kind to yourself, and there are times for tough love. Now is one of those times. There's an important change needed for you to reach new heights, but you're prepared. Your past self is behind you, and the future calls. Examine your choices honestly. Is this the best you? All right, so now let's think about our bookstore owner in the fantasy world. Finding an interesting object. How can this apply? So put your answers in the chat if you'd like to share.
Okay, we're getting some contributions here. Erin says that the object means the owner has come to terms with her past.
Ooh.
And Pam, for so long, no one bought books from the brick and mortar store. Then a bombing across the street brought the curious crowds to her store. They came in asking for books on terrorism. She was reluctant to supply them. One day in the back stack, she found an amulet.
Ooh, I love that. That's so cool. We got the crowd of people on the card that brings that in. Oh, cool idea. I like it.
Kay says maybe she's always felt she was isolated, but through discovering the object, she realizes she needs to rejoin the world to do good with her power.
Love that. Yeah, that's great.
Sarah says the owner is at a crossroads, finding the object, who the object belongs to, or stick to her regular life are her choices.
Ooh, I like that too.
Always a
yes, Sarah, that's good. You're
right.
You're learning how to be mean to your characters.
The bookstore owner finds an object that makes her realize she has a hidden inheritance as a diviner. She must accept or reject the call to action.
Oh, I like that.
Crossroads type.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, if you notice the banner the angel is holding, it kind of looks like a flag, kind of looks like a crossroads, right? That's neat. All right, so let's move on to the Knight of Wands now, and then we'll have you guys do one on your own and share some ideas. Okay. So for Knight of Wands, it says the commanding leader, totally confident in their actions and abilities. The king can be an inspiring teacher or boss you really expect. Oh, sorry, I stopped on the wrong one. That's the king. The Knight of Wands, this is the real one. The Knight of Wands is all action and doesn't spare any time to stop and think, right? So this is like the ready, fire, aim guy. They pursue their goals singularly and recklessly. Their unstoppable passion is inspiring, but comes with risks. If the knight is you, it's time to be bold and seize that crazy opportunity in front of you. It won't stick around for long. Enjoy this feeling of total confidence in yourself, but just be aware that there can be unforeseen consequences for acting too impulsively. Okay, so take a few minutes to think about how that might apply to our bookstore owner finding an unexpected object. Put him in the chat if you'd like.
Ooh, okay. So Penny says the night is the, quote, fool's rush in where angels fear to tread.
Exactly, yep.
Penny says, though she's wary of the object, she needs to use it and embrace it to begin her journey.
Oh, that is a very good one.
Harriet, maybe the object belonged to a long-lost relative that had the answer to the family secret.
Mm.
So going into the past, Karen thinks the one person wants to rescue the owner, but makes the situation worse.
That is definitely possible with the Knight of Wands energy.
Pam says, as she held the amulet, colors swirled around her. The knight embossed on the amulet stepped into the room, bowed, and said, "At your service, man."
Oh, I love that. So fun. Very cool. So I hope you can see from this example just how that interactive element, in this case, both from the cards and from each other, as we're kind of putting ideas together, building on each other's ideas, spinning things in a different direction, how that helps you just be more creative. And also the play aspect, there's the stakes are low, so we can just rush in. We can take risks. We can say any crazy thing that comes up, and then those may lead to, that the story insight that you need. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation and guide you guys through another liner. There we go. Okay, so now your turn. So if any of you have decks, you can go ahead and use your own decks as you do this. If you do not, actually, let me do this again. I'm going to paste this into the chat for you. You can use this randomtarotcard.com. And then also, as we look up the meanings, you can use, there's lots of different places you can look at meanings, but this is from tarot.com. Okay. All right, so the prompt we're going to work with here is called Skeleton in the Closet. Okay, what secrets is your character keeping that they would go to great lengths to keep hidden? And you're going to draw 1 to 3 cards for insight. So if you're doing the random tarot card, if you pick a second card, the first one goes away. So you probably just want to do 1 card for this in particular. So take a few minutes and think about a character that you want to work with. This is really great for suspects in a mystery or a crime novel. A lot of times people look guilty even when they're not, because they do have a different secret that they're hiding. And that's a great way to misdirect your reader. So once you got a character in mind that you want to work with, go ahead and shuffle your cards or use the randomtarotcard.com and click the deck for a random draw. I'm going to be working with the Darkwood Tarot deck for this one. Has a cool dark fairy tale kind of vibe. Okay, and if you haven't already, you can observe the cards you drew and jot down or just think through your ideas about the visual insights. And then you can also look up the meanings. I'll give us about 2 more minutes here, and then we will go into breakout rooms so you can share what you see, what you're observing, your ideas with a group of other writers. Okay, so hopefully you guys got some Got to share some of your ideas and get some ideas from each other in your breakout rooms. We're going to do one more practice in another breakout room if we have time, and then we'll open up for Q&A at the end. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so this is our second example. So here we're going to work with a plot or a premise spread for a new story idea. So let's say, for example, you wanted to submit a story for the Capital Crimes 2024 anthology, but you don't have an idea yet. So you could do a spread to come up with a basic premise. And this is also really good if you're in the early phases of story ideas. If you have like a vague idea that needs fleshing out. So this one, I like to do a 3-card pull. You can think of these as either beginning, middle, end, right? Something that happens at the beginning of the story, middle, and then the end. Or you can look at it in terms of a character's past, present, and future, right? Like what in the past informs the decisions they're going to make in the present, and how does that turn out for them in the future, in the end of the story. For some reason, those just a lot of people use these a lot. Lisa Kessler uses these. Those confuse my brain. I don't know why. When I pull a spread, but I tend to do 3 things rather than beginning, middle, end, and just pull 3 cards and see how those 3 elements might be something I can incorporate into the premise of the story. So you can choose any of these that you'd like. So if you've got your decks, go ahead and shuffle. Think about if you do have any vague ideas, think about those as you're shuffling. Even if it's something like, it's going to be in this specific subgenre, and you want to have a character that's a detective, or you want to have a cozy protagonist who just inherited her mother's bakery. Okay, so now we've got some time for wrapping up. Questions? Anybody has questions? We can talk. Yeah.
Did you share your handout in the chat?
Yes, I did, but I can reshare it for anybody who can later. Just have to escape out of here real quick.
Jessica, is the only way we can access your handout by going into CAPTA?
I have it as a PDF also, so I can send it out through Capital Crimes to
that would be so lovely.
Yes.
Thank you.
So any attendees can get that.
Harriet wants to know when your book will be available.
So it will be available. Okay, so I just put the link in the chat to the workshop handout, so you can see that on the screen on Canva, even without logging in. If you have a Canva account, you can sign in and download it. But I'll get a PDF. I don't think there's an option to attach anything to the chat in here, so we'll have to send out an email. So my book will be out in the summer of 2024. I'm not sure the month yet, depending how everything goes. But let me share another thing. Right now, it is launching on Kickstarter. So share this with all the links. And the handout has all these links as well.
And Rick, I think you had been monitoring questions.
Yeah, we have a couple, but most of them were self-answered during the event. But the first one that came in was, how does having more than one deck help? Do you read differently or different decks differently?
Do I think each deck has their own kind of point of view. and their own take on the symbols and what's going on in each of the cards. So I guess kind of yes. I mean, the basics are the same, but the nuances and the details can be quite different. And so the different decks can give you a different mood. Like there's some decks that I use for like if I have darker stuff, I'll use like the dark wood. I also like to write horror. And then the Haunted House Tarot. This is my favorite for other dark fiction. This one doesn't have a guidebook though, so that's a bummer. But it's really cool, neat artwork. And then if there's like more of an upbeat vibe, we might have the Light Seers. It's really fun and powerful. So like I kind of think about the energy of the main character or of the scene that I'm trying to create and choose which deck I use based on that.
Well, this is kind of a parallel question. It says you mentioned you have a lot of tarot decks.
Mm-hmm.
When you're pulling cards for your prompts, do you pull one of three cards from only one deck, or do you combine the decks? Or
that's a good question. Penny shared that she has 3 different decks and she pulls one from each. And I've never done that before. I usually will do all from one deck, or sometimes I'll do all from one tarot deck and then do one from an oracle deck. And so an oracle deck, they're kind of like tarot cards, but they're not the same 78 cards in the tarot. They might have they could be anything, but they're about mental states and affirmations, kind of thing.
And there was a question about the font that you use for your card titles, which is
that's Brillin 1.2.
What is it again?
Do you mean on the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brillin 1.2.
Oh, nice. Okay. I think, let's see. What someone asked about, if the meeting is recorded, and that was answered, and then there was a question about your Kickstarter page, and that was provided, and that's really all the questions I had. Most of them were related to when we were doing the exercises. So
okay.
Oh, there's one. There are 2 here at the bottom. Do you ever pull a card and then discard it because it doesn't work?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Always. This is not like a set of rules you must follow, right? This is an activity that's here to help you create stories. So always go with your own intuition on that. Like if it just feels off, then yeah. Like I'll do that sometimes. It's just not right for the question I asked, or maybe I asked the wrong question, and then I'll pull new cards or change decks.
And then I'm very curious about the answer to this too. Have you thought about making your own deck for writers?
I have. Yeah, that's something that's on my list of future projects. I would love to do that. Yeah. But not yet. So that's got a couple more projects I got to finish first. Yeah, but yeah. So the book Tarot for Fiction Writers is coming out the summer of 2024, and but you can get it early. It's on Kickstarter right now, and if you're not familiar with Kickstarter, it's a crowdfunding platform specifically with the aim of bringing creative projects to life. There's a really vibrant community there of book lovers, artists, tarot card designers. Oh man, there's some great decks that come out of Kickstarter. That are just blow me away with their creativity. Like there's one right now that's the Rhythm and Soul deck, and it's about jazz and blues, and the person creating it is from Memphis, so it's like Memphis music history. So it's really cool. I had to back that one, and I think that ends on Monday if you want to check that out. But just lots of great projects there, and so and Kickstarter, so like on retailers, you can only offer books, right? But on Kickstarter, like I've got bundles of physical books, digital books, consultations, workshops, stickers, notebooks. I'll have a visual tarot spreads for fiction writers too. So it'll have all the prompts from the book, but laid out on their own pages visually. I'm a very visual person, so that's always the format that I prefer to use for stuff like that. What else do I have? Yeah, so there's a lot of bundles with stuff together. Yeah, it's a really fun project. And if you're looking for a place to launch future creative projects, I encourage you to just check out the site, even if you don't look at my project. There's just lots of really great projects and just a great community over there.
Well, thank you, Jessica, so much. I don't know if we've ever had this much going on in the chat as far as ideas and discussion. So this was wonderful.
Oh, I'm so glad. I was so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Oh, and I also have a freebie if anybody's interested. I have the Secret to Irresistible Scenes, which is kind of like I call it a Tarot for Fiction Writers playbook. It's a mini section of prompts and instructions, and so you can get that for free if you sign up for my tarot newsletter.
And that's through your website?
It's through my website, and then it's also listed on the handout, and I can put it in the chat too.